So hey, this is Tristan Nito for Mozilla. I'm, as you may know, doing a series of interviews about the Mozilla contributors, and today I have a bit of a surprise, which is to interview Mitchell Baker herself. Well, we are here in Paris at the Senate, following an event we had earlier this morning where Mitchell spoke. So, hi Mitchell! So, welcome to the low-tech, cheap version of Air Mozilla. This is France, it's smaller than the US and less hardware to do beautiful video and stuff.
Be clear, this is Tristan at work.
Exactly. Well, it's a bit unusual to do interviews. Well, I try to find obscure volunteers of the Mozilla project, and then here you are. So can you tell us when did you start working on Mozilla?
Oh, eons ago. I started in January of 1998 with a discussion, actually with the Netscape management, about making the communicator code open source. As I recall, it was a Monday morning and I got this call that said you need to be at this meeting at 8 a.m. Monday, I think right after the Christmas holiday. And I was pregnant and never get up in time for an 8 o'clock meeting. So my first memory of Mozilla is this Sunday night call and dragging myself out of bed at some horrendous hour Monday morning to go to work and find out what was going on.
And you were late?
Oh no!
Were you on time? No, okay.
Netscape executive staff, not be late. No.
Man, 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, it's
yes,
it's
with
a
a surprise call Sunday night. It's not like I was prepared, but I went, and that's when I think the final decision was made at that meeting.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I remember getting a conference call probably a few days later, discussing this in Europe, the things that the impact it would have in Europe, and I was on that conference call, so yeah.
And it was surprising.
Yeah. Oh, was it? Yeah, of course it was. It was just no, it's I think it was extremely surprising. So, what did you think about it? Was it exciting? Was it scary?
That's a good question. So, what I thought about it was Netscape. For months in advance, Netscape had been planning to make the communicator code free of charge. Right? And that was a big deal because that was still most of Netscape's revenue, and for a company to lose revenue overnight. So what I remembered about that process was it was giant and it went on for months. And I would get calls to go to the meeting, and I'd walk in and there'd be 30 or 40 people in a room and weeks of planning and stuff to do. And I thought, wow, this is Netscape. I don't remember Netscape being like this. And then Sunday night I got this call and it said you need to be here Monday morning. And Monday morning by 8:20 the decision, or 9 o'clock or whenever it was, the decision was done, and we had 2 days for a press release and 2 months to get the job done. And I thought, now this is Netscape.
Yeah, getting things done very quickly.
Right. In a time frame almost impossible, but somehow you had to make it happen. And so, to me, that decision felt much more like the Netscape that I remembered.
Yeah. And so, what did you do afterwards? After that meeting?
Well, my first big job was to figure out what the license would be. Because, of course, the license says so much about your community and how you want to build it and what you're thinking of. Maybe less so today. Less so today, although there are still some licensing communities that are very interested in getting other people to use their license and promoting their license. And I don't mean just the Free Software Foundation, there's others as well. But it used to be that was, if you chose an Apache license, it really meant a lot of things about you, and if you chose a different license,
it meant other things.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had to figure out what to do in that setting, and what to do in a setting where we had to build a real open source project, or got to do that, but it had to work with commercial settings. So that was a big deal, and we ultimately decided to write the Mozilla license. And that was a massive deal. So mostly I spent time thinking about, oh, what do I do? How do I make this work?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, but you were not directly involved. You were not chief lizard wrangler at the time.
That's right.
So.
That's right. So my job was both the license and to think through the other organizational things that had some sort of legal or intellectual property issue to them. So that would be things like the contributor agreement, which of course is kind of one of the steps you do in an open source project now, but was really had to be thought through in our day, because we don't work the way the Free Software Foundation works. We don't require copyright assignments. We work very differently. So all that had to be figured out. And even at the time, we did think about, should we make it an independent organization? We thought about it from the very start. And ultimately, someone or some group decided not to, that it was too much trouble at the time.
Yeah.
So thinking through all of those things, partly from the intellectual property legal perspective, but working a lot with the engineers to get it right. Okay.
And so, how did you get in this position of chief lizard wrangler? From being doing legal stuff to more of leading the project itself.
Well, I was doing legal stuff, but that's a little bit of a misnomer. It really was doing software product lifecycle things. I mean, business things as well.
Okay.
That's what the lawyers did, which is, I guess, a poor way of saying it was really pretty deeply integrated in the engineering world in a way that most people don't think of lawyers as being.
Yeah.
But to make the change, Mozilla was launched in March, the end of March 31, 98, and my son was born in early September. So after sort of Mozilla got started, I went on maternity leave for a while, and by the time I came back, AOL was acquiring Netscape. So everything was changing, and I knew a couple things. One, I was bored with what I was doing. When we started Netscape, there was no web to speak of, and there was certainly no law, and there were no contracts, and there were no models, and we made everything up. I mean, I remember thinking about the first definition of a website and a web page to write in a contract with the early search engines, Yahoo and etc. So I was bored because some number of years later,
it was becoming like a company and an established market, and
and something would happen, and I'd think, oh, I know how to do that. We take this piece from this deal, and this piece from that arrangement, and this piece, and this is going to be a problem, and kind of package that up and hand it off to someone else to do. And say, come back to me when you get to this area, because that's going to be the hard part. So I was bored. And I knew I didn't want to go into either the legal or the business development departments of AOL. And I kept thinking about Mozilla, which was interesting and unknown. And it turned out that my boss, who was the general counsel of Netscape, kept thinking about Mozilla in relation to me. And when she raised it with Barksdale, the CEO, he thought, oh, that's a natural. That's exactly where she should go. She should go run Mozilla. And since all of us had been thinking in that same light, it seemed like a good path. So then the real key thing, though, was to go find Brendan Ike, who even then was, I think, of the heart and soul of Mozilla, and see what Brendan thought. Because I knew it didn't matter what Barksdale or anybody in the management group said. What really mattered is whether Brendan and the other engineers would accept me. And that was a little story, because even then it was hard to find Brendan. And he had a cube, but had his name tag on it, but he was not in that cube, ever, and only occasionally in the other cube that he had staked out. So it took me many trips actually over to that part of the world to find him. But once I did, it took maybe half an hour. And I explained what was going on, that I wanted to make a change, that the management levels were quite willing, maybe interested to see me come be sort of general manager of Mozilla. And what did he think? And he quizzed me for a bit, in Brendan's style, but he knew me. He quizzed me for a bit, and then he said yes. And we have had a really phenomenal partnership since that day.
Okay, cool. You know what? I suggest that we stop now, because it's already almost 10 minutes, and we'll get back for a second part.
Sounds great.
Okay, excellent. Thanks a lot, Mitchell.
My pleasure.